like something more than this. I stacked choir vocals to be like Queen. And I went, you know what? I'm not Freddie Mercury. We aren't Queen. We can have cool Les Paul leads and we can do all the kind of fun shit that they do, but we're not gonna sound like Queen. It's just not gonna happen. So I just kind of had to trust.
Hello there, and welcome to the final episode of Season 6 here on The Record Process. And to help us close out this season, we've invited a friend of the show by the name of Matthew Lowry to come speak with us about the concept behind his newest independently released album titled Flamingo County. Released on September 15th of 2023, the album is a bit of a musing on growing up, evolving, and the way people's lives change as they get into those really life-defining years when they make the most important choices. And even though a lot of Matt's musician friends, many of whom actually performed on this record with him, have chosen to move on to more traditional family lives, Matt has stayed committed to the process and dream of telling great stories and making great music for himself. With the songs on this record, Matt set out to help others find comfort and encouragement in the journey that his life has taken him on. And ultimately, he hopes that it can help others find what he calls their own Flamingo County state of mind. So let's say you've just finished the latest round of mix revisions, or the last few tracks on a production you've been working on, but you want instant feedback before you go and ship them out. That's where Audio Movers steps in. Their revolutionary technology allows you to stream high-quality audio in real time, making remote collaboration a breeze. And with Audio Movers Listen To plugin, there's no need for complicated setups or endless file sharing. Simply stream your audio directly from your favorite DAW to anyone, anywhere in the world in real time. And now with their newest plugin, they've made it possible to apply binaural rendering to Dolby Atmos mixes, allowing you to monitor how the spatial audio will sound on Apple Music. Through innovations like this, Audio Movers is leading a revolution in web-based audio transmission and reimagining the way musicians, podcasters, and educators engage with the world around them. So check them out at audiomovers.com and start your free trial today. One of the toughest hurdles for musicians and producers to overcome is recognizing when it's time to let your music go. So stop letting your music sit there on a hard drive waiting for the perfect label scenario to show up. Let DistroKid help you start reaching the fans you deserve right now. There's a reason why DistroKid is the go-to platform for independent musicians across all genres, and it's because they offer seamless and affordable solutions to distribute your music worldwide. Get your tracks on all the most popular streaming platforms like Spotify, Apple Music, Amazon, and so many more in just a few steps. Time is often money, and DistroKid understands that. So they've eliminated long wait times for processing your music in the system. And in fact, they can get your music live in as little as 24 to 48 hours now. The simplicity of the platform and features like automatic revenue splits and YouTube content IDs make distributing your music and collecting payments incredibly simple. DistroKid does not take a percentage of your royalties, and for one low annual fee, you keep 100% of what you own. It's straightforward, transparent, and affordable. So follow the link in our show notes to get 30% off your new DistroKid membership and start letting your music work for you. If you're a solo musician, a singer, a songwriter, or part of a band, you know that the journey does not end once you have that finished master in hand. Building a lasting career around your music requires a lot of additional activities to do things like develop, promote, and ultimately monetize your creative vision. And for those of us that aren't quite doing Taylor Swift level numbers yet, it helps to have a merchandising partner that can meet you where you're at right now. And SmartPunk MFG is a perfect solution for any and all merch manufacturing needs your band might have. From the first note to the final stitch, they have it all covered with whatever you might need. They do screen printing, they do embroidery, stickers, vinyl and CD production, posters, and pretty much everything else under the sun. They are an incredibly comprehensive online merch solution offering reasonable prices and feasible quantities for bands of all sizes. So go check out some samples of what they can do at smartpunkmfg.com. And when you're ready, just shoot them an email at info@smartpunkmfg.com and mention the record process to get 10% off your first order. So remember, that's Smart Punk MFG, and it's where creativity meets manufacturing excellence.
I do want to say on the cover,
Mm-hmm.
it makes me so damn hungry. That looks so good. All the I just pulled it up and all the crab and is that corn?
It's shrimp, corn, sausage, potato. Like it's a true low country boil with shrimp instead of crawfish. Though I will say that we did the Gulf Coast boil, right?
All right.
So
it really does look amazing. The photo is both candid but also extremely thought out. I have a feeling, and it actually, I'll have to find this picture and just send it to you on the side afterwards. But it reminds me of a photo that we took for some magazine cover. It was a Wonder Years, I guess, promo style photo, actually, that our friend and Tom, you know him, Dan King, took many years ago in one of our friends' backyards. That was like a very debaucherous barbecue themed thing where it's just have our bass player literally spraying lighter fluid on the grill, me overhead throwing a keg across and trying to capture everything at once. And it reminds me, this is actually maybe way more of a curated and refined, condensed vibe, I guess. Yeah.
It's very Last Supper-y.
And it's beautiful. So we're kind of just diving right in here.
I love it.
Obviously we're talking about the cover art and this lovely photo that we're talking about. What is that cooler stocked with, by the way?
That is all Busch Light.
All Busch Light. Seems very appropriate.
It's as rural southern Florida as you can get, man.
I was gonna say, is that the official beer of South Florida, or?
Yes, let's jump right into it. That theme was very if you listen to some parts of the album, there's definitely this southern rock kind of flair that flies through, or some of that Americana thing. And so, because that's kind of what I am it's a mix of being on the beach with the flamingos and that side of Florida. But then there's central but hot Florida where it's just rural and southern. And my grandpa had a 20-acre ranch in Mayaca, which is just down there in nowhere. So I grew up playing outside in the dirt in Florida too, man. So it's just this mix of kind of two worlds, I think. And
Florida contains multitudes. It's like we've always never said, but it does. Well, Matthew Lowry, we are hopping back. So we've already kind of started diving into the visual elements of this wonderful record, Flamingo County. And we have invited you here to dive even deeper into everything that is behind and contained beyond the cover itself, although that's a nice component here that does a lot of heavy lifting initially. If you were to judge this audio book by its cover, I think you'd be intrigued for a read at the very least. But yes, let's start a little bit further back, pre-album. For everybody that might not be familiar with your work as an artist, as a songwriter, let's give us the Cliff Notes version of what brought you to the time and place and headspace to dive in and break ground on this record.
Well, as you said, I'm Matthew Lowry. I've been playing music my whole life. I've started piano at 5-6 years old. And then through the years, just added more instruments as I went. I did strings in middle school. I did saxophone in high school and college, as well as picking up the guitar finally when I was 15. And from then on, it was just, I don't know, it's always been songwriting. I started that when I was young, but I'm a rocker. I was always feeling that. And so even though, I always did choir, I did musicals in high school and things like that, I was always writing my own rock songs or wanting to be in a band / starting and playing in bands as soon as I could. I'm a Florida boy mainly. We moved around a bit growing up, but I spent some time in Pennsylvania. Actually, I was over south of Altoona in Bedford County. That's where I went to high school.
Well, honestly, not the bird side of the state necessarily, but we'll count it. We'll count it.
Mom's still up there. But yeah, man, I actually, over at Jaggard United Methodist, I went to shows during the end of high school, and obviously Ryan Wapner doing a lot of hard work out there, putting on good shows.
I was going to say, I'm sure you know him. him. Yeah.
So, that was my thing. And so then when I came down to college in Florida and back in my home state, started playing in some different bands. A band I joined at the end of college is called Terra Terra Terra. We signed to a label, put out a couple albums in the late through 08, 09 through 2012 or so. Then I played in a band called Every You with a guy named Matt Burns, who I'm sure you know works over at Smart.
I also know very well. Yes. I just saw him at Fest a few weeks ago.
Like, you saw him at Fest, I'm sure, man. That's who had a ticket for me. And he was like, if you can make it up. And I was like, I want nothing more than to be there this weekend, bud. Anyway, yeah, so did that for a couple years. And then he kind of shifted from that into, the smart punk thing and got married, had kids, and, changed directions a little. And then I was just kind of left in a world of like, what am I doing? And I'd always been a band guy, but I wanted to do my stuff. I wanted to write. I've always been writing, but it's like, I want to really focus on what I'm doing. And so I did that. I did a couple EPs at the Vanguard Room and just kind of on my own, took our time recording them over a while, me and a guy, Matt Wilbur. And put those out like right before COVID and didn't really do anything. Just kind of released them, just put it out to just get a feel and play some local stuff. And it was fine. It was good. I'm happy that I did that. I spent a lot of time like feeling comfortable in the studio and allowing myself to kind of be in charge, which was new. I was not used to being the one like making every executive decision. But so I was kind of nervous too. So I'd really default to like, well, what do you think? What do you think? Or how does it sound to you? And so I don't think I ever took creative control on those couple of EPs and then like, let it be me. Like, what does Matthew actually sound and feel like? And so basically release those, have this kind of realization once they're out that like, all right, this is fun. They're a little more poppy, a little more songwritery. And I was like, but I'm not this guy. I want to be like, I'm rock and roll. Like, I want to write rock songs. I want to do something that has a freaking breakdown in it. You know what I mean? I want to have fun, but I am a songwriter. So you lean into these, there's the classics of your Elton Johns or like, these beautiful Freddie Mercury moments in Queen where he just got to shine. Not that I'm Freddie adjacent, but I wanted that, like, write a huge power song on the piano and freaking let the band bring the noise behind you. And so I just kind of started writing more of like, what do I love and how do I take these things and like have fun with them again, I guess, and not try to achieve anything, but like have a lot of fun writing stuff that I think is a good time. And so I just started letting myself write pretty honestly from like, okay, well, if you're not trying to fulfill any like this genre or this thing or start a band, but if you're just writing these songs, just let yourself write for a while. And so I did that. Luckily, as we said, COVID let that kind of thing happen in a very easy way. I had a lot more time to just be at home and do that kind of work. And all of a sudden I was like, shit, I've got a lot of songs and I want to do this. Like, I want to make an album and like have a vision, not just here's a bunch of songs I have, but like, this is an album. This is the idea. Let's take it and turn it into a completed vision, not, a couple EPs or just a collection of songs kind of. So to
have something that has a cohesive identity. I mean, there's a lot in there, Matthew, in that, even just in that journey. Right. So, and what's interesting, and Tom, maybe you're picking up on this too. I love it. The previous season, we talked a lot about expectations and how they play into, the final product of a record, and the extent of an artist's career and, the twists and turns that they go through, right? Both mentally, creatively. And it's interesting to say that this is kind of, you came from being in a number of bands, a number of group collaborative situations as a songwriter, right? Tom, myself, we talk about this all the time, right? Is sometimes that's great to have other voices and that lifts you up, gives you other ideas, gets you unstuck. But then also sometimes it means that you're part of a mold that kind of starts to fit together, and certain ideas and things either aren't greenlit or don't, pass the test. So it never feels like a full 100% representation of what comes out. And it sounds like these EPs and what brought you to this was the perfect extension and example of what happens when you strip away all context of genre expectation and say, when I write songs, what happens, for the first time in a really long time. And I love that too, because even, in reading about how you've spoke about the record and these songs, and even mentioning, artists like Queen, and really bombastic, like kind of classic rock stuff from the 70s, there's a kind of theatric flair to it, right? But there's also a lightheartedness at times that I think sometimes is tough to sneak into a different project or that extension of a personality. And when it was all kind of stripped away, that's what came forward with this, right?
Yeah.
Which is really
Yeah,
neat.
yeah.
And what better way to do that and bring that to fruition than, in the most honest representation of it, and we talked about the cover art as well, which feels very familial and very friend circle-esque, obviously. You still did end up pulling a lot of familiar faces and people that you trusted into the mix, even though these were songs that you kind of conjured up in a really honest, lighthearted way. So how did that come about? When, was that before you started writing that you reached out to these people, or were the songs in full force before you knew who you wanted to bring into the mix?
It was a little bit of each. I think there was some ideas that felt good. When I had done the EPs, I had used some of the guys from the studio or close friends that recorded in the studio to do the parts that weren't me. So, I'm definitely always like a servant of the song, which I think is helpful. It's like, it's not about who plays it. It's about it getting played as good as it can get played, right? And like representing the song and serving it as a greater whole. So I was like, great. These studio guys, who were people I knew, so it's not like they were strangers to me, like I still knew them, had played those parts. And as you said about career, in those other bands, I was never the primary songwriter. I was always a musical ear that came in and did a lot of musical help and arrangement, and especially in Terra 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 with our two. Like, I just really, like, Lauren would write the song, but we would work on parts together, use this idea here or that, and then I would just bring all the musical ideas to kind of surround the structure of that song. So I felt comfortable in that, but then in this, taking the lead, I was like, well, I'm really just going to get the people I want to play these parts. And who do I know better than literally my best friends? I'm talking people that I have known for over a decade, either played in some of the other bands with, or just like went to college with and are still my best friends in the world. I was like, well, Rick, who played lead guitar, he plays bass for us live, right? But he played lead guitar on 2 songs, All My Friends Are Selling Out and Deconstruction. And just like, I wanted his style, I wanted his feel, I wanted his mentality to come in and bring, because I knew he would be Rick on this track. And that's what I wanted. I wanted it to be fun. And I didn't want hired guns, except I wanted my friends to be those hired guns.
Yeah.
We're going to play these songs live. And it was still more of a novel idea of, guys, I have these songs. I want to record this album. I know we're all in like adult life for the most part, but like, I want to do this and see what's up and start playing shows. And at first it was just like, will you just come record these songs? So I kind of handpicked. I mean, Micah's my drummer, so he played on everything. But like, I had my buddy Josh, he played lead on these 4 songs. And I had my buddy Corey play lead on these 4 songs. And I had Rick come in and do a couple. And so it just was like taking my friends and having fun. I'm like, I know what you're great at, and I'm going to use what you're great at for this. One of my really good buddies, Casey, who works at the studio, he just plays guitar, and bass is his like shit. He is amazing. He is a great musician. He and I talked for a year leading up to recording at the studio, and like, he'd come over and I'd throw song ideas, or what do you think about this? Or what do you think about this tone? And like, he's the gear nerd. So he's like, I got this pedal and I got this pedal, and we can mess around with this and do that. And so like, I had him play bass on 3 songs. So I knew same thing. He's going to nail this for what I need. And so, but it was still like only within my friends. Like, I didn't want it to be random people doing anything. Bryce, who engineered and co-produced with me, he had actually played drums on the EPs I did in the studio previously. And then like, I was like, hey, will you like engineer and like co-produce this thing with me? I'd like on some other projects. So like, and the studio was literally 4 blocks from my house. So I couldn't be more, I could not be more like at home in this making of this record. And that's what I wanted, because it's like, I'm a grown man. I'm in my mid-30s. Now I'm expecting a child in the spring now. I didn't know this when I started this whole journey a few years ago. That'd be where we're at. But like, I'm grateful that like, I've done it my way in a very like, the band is my friends, and we will just be dudes that play shows anytime we get a chance to do it, and it makes sense, and we're going to put this album out, and we're going to just keep having fun. And I wanted to have fun. I didn't want to fucking shoot myself in the head over stress. I wanted to have fun with friends writing songs.
It's almost like if you were Tom Petty and Flamingo County was your Wallflowers, they would be your Heartbreakers.
Yes, 100%. Like,
great.
They are I've been saying, I was like, they're my Heartbreakers. They're my E Street band. They're my Silver Bullet band.
Yes.
Like, I am Matthew, and they are the Flamingo County Players. Like, that's what I call them, by the way. The Flamingo County Players.
A+. Well done.
That's great.
See, and what I love about this is, and this is why we always kind of set the stage, and why the context for every record is really important. Not just, that year or that extended period of making the record, but what leads up to it is it took you a while to find those guys and know that those, know their strengths and how they play stylistically, and to feel really comfortable with them, to set that scene, to have them come in and just be able to make this really honest, fun record. Right. So I love that. That's beautiful.
How did you bring the songs to them? As far as like what state were they in?
We did all the demos with my drummer Micah at his place. So when he had played for me for I did a couple shows after I put those EPs out, right? And Micah's a homie. He played drums in Terra 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 for the last year and a half or 2 years of it. He played in Every You with us. Micah and I he slept on the floor in my house more times than you could imagine. He's a brother, right? We talk on the phone freaking 4 times a week. So we are very, very close, and he loved engineering and got into doing recording at home and tracking and doing drum stuff. So we just went over there and we demoed everything out. And so I had played some of the ideas for the guys, recorded a song or, hey, come over, here's this song. And I sent him a video, and there were a couple that we did. I was like, let's see what this feels like in the room together. Just as 3 or 4 guys rocking out and playing this idea. And it was like, okay, yeah, this is dope. We're going to make this into Coming for You or what, you know what I mean? Something like that.
Yeah.
So those kinds of songs had a couple chances to breathe early, but not really. But everything else was just, here's a demo that I did. I do the pre-production, and then I'd send it and be like, I want you to play guitar on this. Even before we were in the studio, tracking it legitimately. It was here's what we have for the demo. Here's my ideas. So that was pretty much it. It was just I want you to do these things. So for instance, and then one at a time. Now, Corey came in and did some demo work for leads for If I Get High, and another song or two that were very intricate. He's a shredder. When you hear the shredding parts, that's when Corey is playing lead. And so we took a little more time with him. But there were 1 or 2 things where I was just come in and we're just going to feel it. We'll just figure that shit out in the studio. Cause I do like keeping that organic magic of what's it feel like in the room right now? What does this song feel like it needs? And so it's kind of a little mix of couple songs literally without even any tracking at all, just live. Here's the idea. We jammed it. It's probably 2 of them. And then most were, here's a demo, here's our pre-production kind of thing. See where we go from there. So
cool. And it definitely shows you feel the energy, specifically on the Coming for You. You feel everyone was in the room and you're fuck yeah.
Yeah.
But I want to jump a little bit back to kind of your thesis of this record and how that kind of also pulled into, I guess, the recording and the songwriting and everything's therefore the thesis, but but also how that impacted lyrically and all that stuff. So can you explain the term Flamingo County?
I can't. So I love old school Florida stuff and that old timey Florida flamingo-y vibe. My grandparents honeymooned here from Pennsylvania in the 50s and fell in love with Bradenton and moved back down a year later. And so that's how the Pennsylvania side of my family ended up in Florida. The same, fell in love with what it is, you know what I mean? And there was still a huge rural side of Florida that's still there where you have your, time to breathe and space, but then you have these beachy towns and it's beautiful. But I also know real Florida. I live in Polk County and it's dirty, it's southern, it's rural. I didn't grow up sipping lemonade on the beach. We went to the beach because it was great and the beach was there, but I was playing in the dirt at Papa's Ranch a lot. So it's this combination of Flamingo County for me is that combo. Like I said earlier, it's kind of the embracing of those things for me as a person. And Matthew Lowry is almost an exaggeration of Matthew, me, who I am, day-to-day life Matthew Hagelberger, right? Lowry's my middle name, so it's still me, but it's this pushing into this state of mind that I want to be in, where I'm just literally this me, this state of everything's okay, man. And those songs are this journey that I did go on. And when I went back through and looked at these songs and looked at these feelings I had, it was me coming to terms with who I am as a person. And who I am as a person is this mix of Florida beach and playing in the dirt and Southern rock and a Gulf Coast boil, but I also got my like floral print shirt on, and I still go to like, you know what I mean? I still do the beach life and live that thing. But I just want to eat food with my friends and fucking drink a little beer sometimes, smoke a little weed, and play some songs. Like, you know, that's it's just like, it's a state of mind. And so this album is kind of the journey of me like finding out I have that state of mind, but also the journey of like still figuring things out and how to get there and what it all really means. And we have one of my best buddies, Grant, who I lived with many different houses. He was my roommate multiple times, random college roommates, and became best friends. He was a DJ on the radio. So I'm talking about him and all my friends are selling out. But then I made him a DJ on Flamingo County radio. I wanted to like...
Right.
And that was just like, how do I tie this album together even more? I think once I realized like Flamingo County is a state of mind is this fun thing that I just wanted to say, I kind of started working those little hints and feelings in different places. And I was like, it's all about like how you brand it and how you sell it and the image. And so I knew right away, I was like, I want like 70s rock radio, like not part of Cox Media Group or anything. It's like, this guy is a local radio DJ and he has artists in and you listen and you talk about it. And so he channeled that. He said he imitated his old boss. And when he
I love that.
Like he was a DJ back in the 70s. And so we sat there in the booth for an hour. We cracked a couple IPAs and we just talked and riffed and riffed and riffed and then went back through and like kind of pieced it properly together.
You taped it as though it was a proper extended radio interview.
We literally like, we're in the vocal booth at the studio. We get in there, like he put on his glasses. He got in like his mental character and we tried to stay like in a very like character kind of thing. But it was like, you know, you'd go for like a minute or two and then just bust out laughing or be like, all right, that sucked. Or, okay, wait, say that again, but let's do this. And so if you go back and just listen to like the raw tape of us talking for 40 minutes or whatever, it's really ridiculous.
You should release that as the extended theatrical cut of the interview. I'm sure even just the derailing moments are probably very much lighthearted gold.
Yeah, I've got that in a SoundCloud folder somewhere or a freaking Dropbox folder somewhere where it's just like...
That was the first thing that strikes you, right? You know, you've seen, and obviously all of us have probably heard people do, you know, whether it's like little skits on like extended hip hop mixtapes or faux like little announcer, like interlude kind of parts. And I thought this was really interesting because it really did the job and spoke to the actual concept and vibe of the record. It more so than a lot of times those other skits or anything, you know, tend to do, right? It was not just like this little like funny little snippet of humor, but it was really thought out, but in a way that, you know, it's still a bit, but it puts you in a time and place and intentionally puts you in that frame of mind and cues you up and continues to move it along in a really nice way that fits and kind of gives you that time and place context, even before the songs come into play, which I thought was really neat. And then when you marry that with the kind of juxtaposition of the cover art, which is, as we said at the top, is kind of this like, you have both Floridas in there, right? You have like the very like the high tier, like Last Supper-y vibe, but then you also have like seafood bake, like cooler of bush, Hawaiian shirt, unbuttoned, you know.
My pit bull on the front, right?
Right. You know what I mean? And so it really, when you put all of these things together, it really starts to create a really powerful message, like you said, where you realize you're like, I'm not just this one a Florida man, and I'm not this other like, you know, Florida. I am all of those things, and that is something that I think, at the risk of kind of over dramatizing it even more, I think is a lot of something that a lot of people struggle with, right? Is like, oh, this, you know, perfect image of this person from Philadelphia. It's like, it's an Eagles fan that has a horrific Delco accent that sounds like something out of Mayor of Easttown, right? Like, and well, that does exist, you know, that that person probably has a bit more context and depth than you necessarily would think, but you don't always get that. And I think that's a beautiful way of you know, in terms of the theme of growing up. And you talk about, and we'll get to some of the songs here, like All My Friends Are Selling Out, right? Like that moving on and turning into and evolving into a new stage of life, a new depth of character, if you will. It doesn't mean it's just a switch from one to the other. I think it kind of, you know, it's the idea that it one character evolving or people evolving and growing and extending themselves into a new personality and another set of characteristics instead of just flipping one out one for the other, right?
It is a journey, and as you said, first of all, thank you. What a lovely insight into things.
It got me. I mean, I saw it all come together in the way, even the way you're talking about it. It's great.
There is a lot of very intentional, thought out things, but like one, the radio clips tying things together and how that all works. I think what we were able to do was, as you said, in a fun skit way, like tell the story. It's not a Nelly skit where you're just laughing for 45 seconds, right? Like, and I love those. And of course, it's kind of a nod to that time as well, where it's just like every album had those kind of funny skits. So I wanted a cohesion, but I wanted to set the stage for, like, first of all, 70s rock albums, you're going to listen to the whole thing, or at least side A and side B, you know what I mean? Like, go on that journey. So we have that kind of feeling. But then there were a lot of thematic elements that, even said in a joking way, push the narrative of the album along. And as you said, like, you know what I mean? Even with the ooh and claps and whatever, it was still like, oh, but I did say something kind of poignant that like actually related to like what the hell was going on. So it was fun to do that. And like, as you said, I think that also the blending of the themes of there's this rural Florida that's like southern and dirty and whatever, but then there's this posh, like beachy Florida with our bright print shirts and our big colors is a mixture of some of the genre on the album too. Is like, you can do whatever you want to do in this fucking life. You can be whoever you want to be. And as an artist and a musician, we can feel so pigeonholed in. You're in a pop punk band, quote unquote, right? How much of that pigeonhole have you felt as a fucking musician? So much.
The fact that our logo is literally a pigeon probably doesn't help.
You're already in a pigeonhole.
I'm the most pigeon-held, if you really want the truth, Matthew. But thanks for that tee up anyway.
No, but you know what I mean? Like,
of course.
Freedom. Because I'm not in this band that's been around for fucking 20 years. I am not somebody who is like been signed to a country label and is in a genre. I am Matthew, a guy making music with his friends. So like, why the fuck would I not give in to these desires to like have as much fun as I can and just like, okay, I'm going to make this song that feels like an Andrew McMahon something corporate kind of gig, but like throw this Southern Rocky thing into it or do this whatever. I just, somehow it all was able to blend. You're able to blend the genres, blend thematic themes, and just kind of make this new journey of an album, Flamingo County.
Yeah, because it's you. As long as the intent is yourself, then of course it's going to work because like you like it.
Well, that's the thing is like, but of course you don't know. There's so much self-doubt as a human, right? Our ego is so like set up. And it was just like, Matthew, you have a job, you have a wife, you've got friends, you have whatever. Why don't you just fucking have fun and do it? And I had to like tell myself, okay, it's going to be okay. I'm going to put this out there. I'm going to talk to people about it. I'm going to try to like share this art that I had fun making. And now I'm like, thank God I did, because I was so scared to like put my heart into something and like really pour everything into it for years, right? And then finally go, well, I hope everyone enjoys this thing that I put my heart into.
If you're listening to this show, I'm guessing there's a good chance that you're the type of person that appreciates the time and effort that goes into something meaningful, something lasting, and something that tells the world exactly who you are. Well, Brett and Dave, the co-founders of our sponsor, Oxford Pennant, share that very same appreciation. They've made it easier than ever to elevate any space in your life and express your style with their meticulously crafted American-made pennants. From classic designs to customized creations, each piece is a work of art. It's quality you can feel and a statement that truly lasts a lifetime. I recently had the pleasure of touring their Buffalo-based shop where they tirelessly make each piece by hand. And honestly, their process really is an inspiring fusion of passion and precision. So go make your mark, celebrate your story, and discover the epitome of timeless craftsmanship and personalized expression by visiting oxfordpennant.com today. That honesty is felt throughout it, right? You know, in the sense of humor that I can already tell in anybody that's been listening, right, for a half an hour, you know, that maybe is just getting introduced, you can tell that there's a sense of humor, but that there's also, you know, a real high-level thought-provoking songwriter in there as well that gets a lot of these things and grapples with a lot of these ideas. And we all grapple with the idea of growing up and the idea of watching life change around us, right? I mean, you're going to be a father, right? Like, that shifts perspective in such a radical way. But how do you make sure throughout this whole process, let's say even when you're in the studio or making some of those, final decisions, that you're not overthinking it too much, or that you're not trying to steer too much into, well, it should sound like this, or why should it sound like this? How do you find that guiding light? Because I think a lot of times that's really hard for songwriters, because we're all a product of our influences and the things that inspire us that we listen to, right? But the second you try and go and your goalpost is, I want this to sound exactly like this Hold Steady record or exactly like an Andrew McMahon record, that's where you start to get into trouble, I think. And that's where a lot of artists start to get into trouble. So what helped you, if anything, to let you know that you were making the honest choice for yourself and not trying to have that be colored too much one way or the other?
I would say a lack of pressure from any outside sources is always helpful, right? There's no expectation for me to meet anybody's needs. So there was no one looking over my shoulder or deciding what song should be there and what song should, I was making all of those. So that helped. And then also just this, obviously there's a fear as a songwriter that you're ripping someone off, like you said, or if you're putting a nod to somebody, is this too on the nose? Am I just doing a parody of their music now? Is that way? Or is this me doing my version of something that I love and that means so much to me? So something more than this, I stacked choir vocals to be like Queen. And I went, you know what? I'm not Freddie Mercury. We aren't Queen. We can have cool Les Paul leads and we can do all the kind of fun shit that they do, but we're not going to sound like Queen. It's just not going to happen. So I just kind of had to trust. And so even with reference to mixing or how it should sound, Bryce was we always do, hey, send me 3 to 5 tracks that say, I love this part of this and this part of this, and that's what this song should sound like, right? You want your reference tracks. So for something more than this, it was just 3 Queen songs. And I was like, listen, this is what it's going to sound like. It's going to sound like Mr. Blue Sky by fucking ELO, and it's going to sound like some sort of Queen track. And there's nothing we can do to stop it. That's just what it is. So let's just have fun and make it our own. And so you got to trust yourself a little sometimes. And guess what? If it would have come out sounding exactly like Queen somehow, great. How did I end up sounding this good? But instead, it just sounds like me being oh, that kind of sounded like Queen with those choir vocals. And it's yeah, it did. Cool. And everybody liked that because they heard what it was and it felt familiar, right? And so instead of being scared, I've created familiarity now in a place where I thought I'd be mocked for parody, right? Or trying too hard and being too on the nose with it.
In a little bit different way. It's why samples right now are so prevalent with samples of late 90s, early 2000s songs. It creates that familiarity right off the bat, regardless of how the song is. And people find a lot of comfort in that. And I think you interpreting and putting those references on your sleeve makes it not deceitful. And I think that's where people when someone's trying to sound like Queen and they're doing everything to sound like Queen and it kind of gets there.
Yeah.
I feel that people take that in and it's even worse than being oh, this is just the part that sounds like Queen rather than
yeah, right.
I think, no, Tom, you're totally right. And I think what it really, when you see things like that, it's about if you think that a whole track is going to front to back sound like one influence, that's when you start to get into trouble because you're inevitably going to encounter a part in that song that was written by not Queen and written by you that doesn't completely fit into that box. But if you can say, hey, this bridge gonna be a Queen-esque vibe, but the verses, I want more of an Elton John kind of piano rock thing happening where that really comes forward. That's where the sum of all those parts becomes this Matthew Lowry thing, and becomes a reference for people that reference that track on your record. And then the influences themselves maybe start to get a little bit blurry. And that's what I love too, where it's, you're able to bake all of those things in, and it's ultimately your taste that says, when we get to this verse, this sounds right to my ear because it's triggering the familiarity of this little section of music from an influence. And then this next part sounds good to me because it's triggering this one, right? And you're not trying to go for a carbon copy and nail every little detail of the same song, right? That seems kind of redundant, and obvious in its own way, but that's really, I think, what's happening, especially on a record like this, where you have a lot of influences where, people could very easily be like, wait, you're writing like a 70s rock song that sounds like Chicago, Kansas, whatever, like Toto.
Compare me to Toto anytime you want.
But I think that's what makes it real, because the second someone might be like, oh, this is like oddly dated, there's something that's still modern and current and has a new, like, refreshing quality to it that comes alongside it. So I think that's how you're able to do that and still make it feel new while feeling nostalgic, right? I think that feels the goal, especially talking about like 70s classic rock and all of these like huge, mega iconic performers, right?
Yeah, and I mean, I think also because it shifts as much as it does throughout the album, it's not like I made 10 songs that sound like Queen, what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's, it's, I'm not Greta Van Fleeting and pretending that I've never listened to all the Led Zeppelin.
Hey, you said it, not us.
Shit on all the time. I'm not trying to shit on any bands out there working hard and earning, bro. And like, I have some friends that they have some tracks I love, but like, there's a very distinct, they did this thing and it is this lane and they're going to do that. And like, I don't want that. I think, that's just pigeonholing yourself. Back to pigeons. But B, I just, that takes away the fun of experimenting. Like right now I'm writing a bunch of stuff that I want to really lean into, like 80s Genesis, like early and mid 80s Genesis, like prog writing, prog shit that's fun in hell, but also like pop songs. So it's like, wow, this is crazy and musical. There's still a hook to sing and there's still fun there because I now trust myself that I can lean into these influences without like being a parody. I keep coming back to that, but I think that's important.
Yeah. So bringing up, I think bringing up like Greta Van Fleet is a perfect example of like, I feel like people either love them or hate them. And it's a love because of the nostalgia. And then like people hate them because it's nostalgic and it's not pushing a boundary. And like it's sounding like a direct copy rather than a innovative copy.
A nod. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Strong nod. Like, yep.
Yeah.
Clearly I did this thing, right?
But I love that. As far as, are we talking Phil or are we talking Peter for Genesis?
Well, okay.
Sorry, I have to touch on that.
I love, first of all, the fact that to ask that question lets me know that we're already friends. We're already very good friends. All right. And it's funny because I think both have their great places, and I love albums from both of them. I am partial to 80s Phil, but I'm talking also like early 80s Phil, like Mama and Home by the Sea and like Duke and Abacab. So like not just the last two albums, which Invisible Touch, top 10 of all time for me. Sorry, I fucking love every moment on it. Tonight. One of my favorite songs of all time. I want to cover it live or recorded someday somehow. It's just like, I love all that. But like, man, there's this era where like late 70s, early 80s Phil just hit this stride, I feel, of like, this is some smart shit. And Tony Banks is just playing the hell out of the fucking keys and everything's super cool. But there's then like, oh, here's these hooks and it gets stuck in your head and you're still singing it. And so I have vinyl from both eras. I Selling England by the Pound, one of my favorite albums. Fifth of Fifth is like, blows my mind every time I hear that song.
Yeah, personally, I'm a big Lamb Lies Down on Broadway.
On Broadway. Yeah.
Get it.
I feel you, bro. I have 2 copies of that album on vinyl. 2 copies. So
amazing.
Like, I'm with you.
I want to touch on like specifically some of the lyrical themes that you touch on. And like now that the album's out and now that to you, new information of that you're having a child.
Yeah.
Can you go through some of those lyrical choices and lyrical themes that you touched on the record and where you were at during those moments and now reflecting back does you now still fit with you when writing?
Right. Oh yeah. Right. Like is Flamingo County the mentality,
Yeah.
persona, state of mind? Does that work for current Matthew?
Yeah.
The answer is no. I have grown up a lot more even than doing that.
Yeah.
I have to work. I can't get up and smoke weed all day like I was caddying at a golf resort. So like you get up, freaking roll a J, have a smoke in the morning, do my thing, drive almost hour it took to get out there. And then I'm carrying golf bags. Now it's a nice resort and I'm on point when I'm there. But like my life was different, which is but it gave me the freedom to like do what I needed to do to write these songs, to take the time off where I was like in the studio Monday through Thursday all day, and then caddying Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and then back in the studio the next week, for a month and a half, 2 months. So it was like I was in this place. And now there's still nothing but truth in that album. And it's like an accurate picture of like what I was really thinking and feeling. Like Get By, Get High, just that first song. Like for me, growing up in a world that was very like Pentecostal, conservative Christian by a lot of my family, extended family. I mean, my dad was a pastor in that church for a while too when I was younger, but like my mom and dad were never like hyper religious people or like, you're going to do this. But the environment I was in and the culture kind of put that pressure on me up here. Right. And so like deconstruction is a talk about that faith journey of like, hey, I kind of grew up and out of this whole thing of life. I still have faith and I still am a person that has like this spiritual journey that I'm never going to get off of. But like, it ain't what it used to be. And it's kind of scary because I don't know what the fuck I believe and what it looks like and like where my life is going forward. I have settled a little more. But in that moment, in that time I wrote those lyrics to that song, it was like, I am floating in space. I have no idea like what's going to happen, but it's okay. Like, this is just where I'm at. Get By, Get High. Like, anyway, was me going, hey, I smoke weed and I write music and I'm in my fucking mid-30s, early to mid, and that's okay. Like, it's okay, guys, that I'm not in a huge career yet or that I'm whatever. Like, I'm happy. I'm writing songs. I'm smoking my weed. I'm going to have fun. And like when I wrote that song lyrically, like musically, that was a fun one to just kind of do. But like when I lyrically wrote it, that made the music better because I was like, oh, I know what this song is. So why don't I take this and like turn it into this classic rock feel song of like, yeah, let's spark one up like it's fucking 1974 and we just put this vinyl on and lead guitar shit. You know what I mean? Like it's just the lyrics made the music more what it needed to be.
And I think that's great because you didn't try to shoehorn it or keep, the music bed like too overly serious or overly analytical, right? Like, and what I love about this actually too is, talking like process. I think a lot of songwriters, I think it's very easy to either make the mistake of like, I'm going to just wait for the inspiration to spark, wait for something to happen, right? Like wait for I'm not going on. A lot of people can look in that scenario and be like, cool, this is it. I got nothing interesting to write about, right? Like nobody wants to hear this shit. But there's also a way of being very honest and realistic about this is me, right? And something really interesting and fun and entertaining can come from that. And it can end up being a really perfect opening sequence to a record like this that sets the tone for it, while also being very like time and place. This is me, right? And so I love that it didn't stop you. It was this is what I'm doing right now, and I'm just gonna have the courage to go ahead and say it with a smile on my face and with some cool like classic rock vibe too, because maybe it doesn't have to be like my Bohemian Rhapsody right now. Maybe it can be something that's also has a place, in the catalog, right?
Yeah, because you don't want the Queen nod to be the number one thing. You want the Queen nod to be the nod, right? So like those guitar lines at the end, it's like, oh shit, that's got that feel. But it wasn't like, you better listen to this. This is what the song's about.
This is important. Yeah.
Yeah. But once I'd written the song, I knew, oh shit, I want this to be track one. And that was just like piano and lyrics, like just piano. But in my head, I talk about this to my wife and she thinks it's like crazy that like, I just hear the instruments in my head. I'm not saying that I always have every part like perfectly tuned out or something like that, right? But it's just like when I'm playing it after I write it, because I write everything either on a piano or on a guitar, just me and that instrument. It's not often that it's a collaborative writing thing. These are my songs. So the structure's there and it's just like, oh, this is gonna rip with some fucking leads and some big guitars and some big, like, I just know. And I'm like, and that's how it should start. Like, hey, this is me. This is the album. But then track 2, I knew, I was like, but let's go right into Coming For You. So it's like, all right. And now we're in this dirty Southern, like old dirty Foo Fighters meets Maylene and the Sons of Disaster, like hard rock song, which is just an immediate, again, I think lyrically, it's like, oh, so this is me and we know who I am. So now here's the song Coming For You that goes, and I'm fucking turning it up to 10 and I'm going straight forward. So there's no BS. Yeah. Those lyrics are very easy, digestible. The first song was a storytelling. The second song is, here's 3 minutes of rock and roll right down your throat. Yeah. Right? And so, which I think sets the tone of, you don't know what's coming as you keep listening to this album. It could really delve into anything, because then track 3 is something more than this. All of a sudden it's light poppy piano and you hear those dang, Queen vocals come in like we talked about. And it's just like, okay, now we're in another world that is not either of these songs, but it's still, okay, rock and roll with piano and people singing and doing their thing and like yearning for more than just, okay, now that I know who I am, I'm yearning for more than what's in front of me. I know that I can do more. I know that I have to change. I sing about, hit the bottle half speed ahead. I had to change my drinking habits. It's a little line, but it's a real line that was like, I'm caddying. I didn't have any response. I have no child yet. I just have I love my wife. She was very easygoing. So all I had to do was show up and go caddy and play music. So I could do what I wanted. But it was like, well, if you want something more, you kind of have to look at who you are and like reflect and change a little bit. So there's some, there's a little bit of that growth that comes in there.
It's such a cool insight to the thought process of sequencing, which is not always, an important question for some artists. But I think here it shows that, there was thought in terms of how to open the record and in terms of, setting the stage with the DJ interview kind of bit. I'm curious, what was the first song written and the last song written, and what was the hardest song potentially to place in the track listing on the album for you?
True. By the way, yes, you nailed it. I put so much time and effort and thought into the order of this album. And like, if you're going to cohesively kind of set a stage and tell a story in a way, obviously it's got to be right. I used to make mix CDs and mixtapes, mixtapes when I was little, when you just record from one to another, right? And then obviously CDs and I'm an album guy. So the flow is everything. And if I'm going to put my stamp on this, this is my first debut solo album, it's going to be the flow and the feel that I want. So I have this big whiteboard. I know I sent you that album with a bunch of pictures. If you look through it, I have this whiteboard I made. Mm-hmm. It was all the song ideas, right? So it's all the demos. And then I have my little calendar in the bottom. And so I just went through every song, and as I was finishing the lyrics and as I was doing whatever, I was just constantly thinking on loop, what's the order? What's the flow? How's it feel? And what am I cutting and what makes sense? And I mean, what's funny is that I didn't even finish writing the lyrics for Flamingo County, the song, until we were in the studio. I had already started recording stuff and I still didn't have those lyrics done yet. There was part of me that knew the vibe was right and the music was right. And I had a couple of the hook idea from the chorus a little bit, but I didn't have all those lyrics done. But I didn't know what the capstone of the album was until we were in the journey of it. And then I'm I knew what the idea was. I knew what the concept was again, but I didn't have the this is perfect. And then I sat down one night and I was like, this is it, write these lyrics. And I just finished those in the middle of tracking, other stuff. We'd done drums first and then the normal, bass, guitars, blah, 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 keys. And yeah, I wrote it in the middle of it because I was like, this is what it is. So Flamingo County, when you say last song, I would say lyrically, that was the last song. That riff idea was pretty early on, but I finished that song lyrically while I was already recording in the studio.
And what was that lyrical keystone?
I think just the idea that I had written the first verse idea kind of, and it was I went down to the bottom, was drowning, heart was pounding, I could barely breathe. It's kind of allusion to the panic attacks and anxiety that I had been dealing with for years. I'd gone through therapy and got some, dealt with my shit and realized what kind of past trauma was and things like that. And so I think lyrically, I realized, this album is me getting through the journey and realizing I don't have to I'm in a different place now. I know how to literally just breathe and put myself into a mentality and a place of where I'm at and it's okay and this is my life. And so Flamingo County is almost my meditative spot as well. When you say state of mind, for me, there's also a literal I'm in my Flamingo County. I'm relaxing. I'm on the beach. I'm doing my thing. Like, it's kind of there too.
It's your Happy Gilmore happy place.
Yeah,
right?
exactly. Right.
Right.
Do my life with 2 pitchers of beer and lingerie.
Yeah. Except it just takes you to the cover art, scene that's it. Yeah. That's it.
But so that song is a stage of like, okay, verse 1 is me like, oh my God, I just escaped a panic attack, but I know I can do it because I'm out on the other side. And then like the chorus is just like I finally found it, that peace of mind between the palm trees and the sunshine. You know, the living is easy, the love is free. There's no other place I'd rather be. If I sang those over like a reggae beat, it would be a completely different song, right? Like, there's such positive lyrics in this like dark rock song. And so like verse 2 is me like, okay, I see the shore, I see what's ahead, I know what the beach is like now. So I'm still fighting in these waves, but like I get it. There's something I can get to. And then verse 3 is me going, oh, the real piece is that I can just lay back in the waves, and there's going to be waves, but I just have to breathe and ride the waves, and the beach is right there, and I'm okay in the water. And so I mean, I was in the water of finishing the album. I get, and I was like, oh, there's a piece of it. Like, I can finish this song. There's no problem there. So the song is like my journey as a person of going through life and panics and dealing with that kind of side of my personal journey, but in a way that is like pretty relatable. I didn't write it to be relatable, but in hindsight, you look back and you go, oh, a lot of people have to go through those stages of like, oh, it's a struggle. I can't believe I can breathe. Oh, at least I can breathe. I got through this one thing. Oh, this is something you can continually get through. Oh, you're actually okay here. You just had to do this whole journey to realize you're fine right here. Just like, it's going to be okay. That's just, you know what I mean? Placing that one was easier when I wrote it last, because I was like, oh, well, this just sums it all up.
That's like very symbolic of the entire record. If that, like, given that was the last one that you were writing and it kind of just came to you.
Yeah.
The fact that it's the thesis of the record, the name of the record is, I think, proves to the point of the meaning of what like Flamingo County means to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the hardest one to place then? The hardest song to figure out where to nestle it in on the track list?
I would say Let You Walk Away, because that's a real slow burner kind of thing. It's very like starts real low and kind of builds. And it was like, it feels like a near the end of the album kind of song, right? Or like the end of the album song. But I knew that was not the end of the album song. And so having the radio clip, being able to like put something there to kind of be like, well, this ends side 1. I think that was it was very challenging until I realized what I could do with it. And then I went, oh, it's perfect here. The end of side 1 is like, I smoke weed and I play songs. Okay, I'm ready to be that guy and move forward. And I want something more in my life. And then all my friends are selling out, which is like, oh, shit, everyone's going away and I'm still playing music. That's okay. We're going to like head down. Like, this is just who we are. Fall Away is about going to therapy and dealing with those panic attacks and like that kind of season in my life and like how I needed to do that. And then that leads right into Let You Walk Away, which is the only love song on the album. It's this great reflection on like my wife and I, and realizing it was fun. It's funny. I wrote it and we were not in any trouble. There was like no danger in our marriage or relationship, but like, it sounds almost like, oh no, she's trying to leave and you're not going to let it happen. And it's more like, no, I had the realization that like, I need to make sure that no matter what I do in life, like, I don't let this person get away from me. I don't lead to something that this will leave. Like, it would be my greatest mistake to let you walk away, meaning things are good. We've been through some shit. Like, you hear the verses. It's like, you've been through your shit and had to get your help. And I've been through my shit and had to get my help. And now I know I need you and I want you. And so I'm going to make sure that like you stay. I'll never let you walk away. And it was great. It just had this very emotional, like Coldplay-esque build at the end. And it was tough to place originally because I didn't know where you fit this track in. And then it just made sense. All of a sudden it was like, oh, the hardest thing in the album that was, where do I put this, is now perfectly placed right here in this little spot. So when you listen to that song, you hear the voice at the beginning and it's a female talking and she's quoting something that's actually Sierra, my wife. And so what I had an idea in my head is that I wanted us to go in and we each read our vows just out loud. And when the bridge starts, you hear 2 people talking. It's actually my wife and I saying our vows from our wedding at the same time. And then that continues to the end of the album. So, or not the end of the song is just mixed in there, hidden a little bit. that's our vows. And at the beginning, that part of that is my wife's voice saying part of the vows. So to sneak that in a song and in the album and like have this special gem, like you wouldn't know unless I told you kind of thing. But
yeah, what a wonderful little Easter egg, and so fitting. I love that. And that, you know what, it's those kind of things that I think give listeners more and more to chew on. And it's just like a great album gets even better with time because it unfolds itself. People relate to different aspects of it, musically, lyrically, thematically over time, and then find out little interesting different things like that are baked in that are really just kind of even sometimes for the artists themselves, you know what I mean? Because you're not broadcasting those little things out there, but it helps the song feel that much more important to you. And thus I think that translates into, making art that's meaningful first and foremost for you. And and this was a beautiful moment of like, what a way to use that kind of clarity and that something really precious, to add just a little extra texture to something when it could have just been very easily like, sound clips of, somebody reciting, some old poem in Latin, or whatever. If you really just wanted to, right. So so I love that you did not phone it in on that one by any means. And before we go, we got to talk, we talked about the cover art, that photo, and how that embodies this kind of Flamingo County state of mind.
Shout out Sarah Barnes for amazing photography on that. My friend Sarah I've known for a long time. She's a Lakelander as well. And she came to one of our shows and we had this talk about doing album art, and she just was like, listen, you're already the Jesus, right? So she's like, let's like Last Supper, that Flamingo County state of mind thing. And I'm like, oh yeah. So shout out to Sarah for just crushing it. I just wanted to
that's awesome.
Sarah Barnes.
It was such a great idea. And then the video end of a few of these songs, you actually brought in a familiar face to Record Process listeners and one of my favorite songwriters and a Florida native, Mr. Aaron Marsh, to work on these videos. How did that come about? And tell us about what that process was like, working with a songwriter and a creative like him who has their own body of work and their own way of thinking too, because that's a really neat collaboration, I think.
Yeah. So Aaron is a good friend. He's a close personal friend, a Lakeland guy before I was a Lakeland guy. I mean, I had a couple years here in elementary school when we were younger. I've been a Florida boy my whole, most of my life. But coming back from college and knowing I fell in love with Lakeland, I just loved being here. And then being at the Vanguard Room when I was with EverU, Aaron was based out of there at the time. And so got to know Aaron just from being in the studio together and hanging out. And like, obviously I'm a Copeland fan too, right? So It was just like, oh, dope. So casual friends, good friends at the studio. We go out and get some tacos with like Matt Wilbur and some other people sometimes and had good fun. But then as the years went on, he and I, when he got married, remarried, to his now wife, Megan. She's a big Premier League fan and got him into the English Premier League. And I am a diehard Arsenal fan for like 20 years. So like long time. And I was like, whoa. You're watching Premier League now? Like what? And he's like, oh yeah. And we're going to do a fantasy Premier League. You want to join? And I was like, I'd love to play fantasy with you guys. So we really started bonding over soccer more than anything else. But obviously both loving good music and being from the same walk of life, we just got closer and closer. So that by the time this album process came around, and I was like doing he wasn't really involved in the music. I'd sent him, once the songs were recorded, the first mixes, I was like, yo, you want to listen to these mixes with me? And so we rode around one night, listened to the mixes together and talked about stuff and ideas and had some coffee. And he really loved All My Friends Are Selling Out, like straight out the gate. That was that one. And It Could Be Raining Outside, which is like my super low ballady electronic, like Debussy meets Death Cab kind of song, which would naturally speak to Aaron's
yes,
liking
indeed.
A little more. So those two were big ones, but he loved All My Friends and that, that vibe I brought with like a very 90s alt Weezer kind of thing. And so he had been telling me actually that night about a video he'd shot for another good Lakeland friend of ours, Ginny D. And he's like, yeah, I shot that one. And so I went and looked at it and I was like, listen, you got your camera? Like I kept that in my mind. And so when it came time to get closer, I was like, hey, are you interested in doing like a really simple, like music video for this song, All My Friends? And I was like, I'd had this idea of like almost parodying like that thing you do with the Wonders, because I kind of like use that as an influence anyway for it. And so a garage, and he's like, well, yeah, we'll just do the garage thing like in my garage. So we shot that video at Aaron's house in his garage. So it was very easy. Like, you know what I mean? We just came over and set up. But when we were planning that shoot, I threw him the idea I'd had for the Coming For You music video as well. And I was like, I'm thinking these like Jackass style, like Southern Florida games. Like, can we like do that?
Yeah.
Is that something you'd also be interested in? And he was like, yeah. So then we plotted all those ideas out. So it was like, all right, cool. My heart felt happy because these were super DIY. Like show up on a Saturday morning at like 7:30, 8 in the morning, shoot for 4 hours, 4.5 hours, done. And then he edits for a day or so. And that's it. Like, there's no big budget for this release. I'm very glad I had a homie. We did the thing a couple times. But as you said, like his artistry and like his attention to like detail, and also our same love of like just kind of a 90s nostalgia in a way. I was like, I want this to be a 90s Foo Fighter type video. Like I want it to be like Dave Grohl and the boys just having fun playing this rock song. So that's kind of what we leaned into a little bit and just like really had a good time. And it was just with just one more time where I was like, if I'm going to do this shit, I'm doing it with my friends and I'm having fun. And so luckily my friend likes to shoot and edit music videos every now and then.
And happens to be Aaron Marsh, a brilliant songwriter in himself. What a great way to watch all of that rise to the surface. Just the idea of, I want this to be fun. I want this to feel good at the origin of it, just playing it and have that permeate all the way through everything. And it shows, man. The record sounds good. You brought some other familiar faces in. Jesse Cannon mastered it. Who mixed it, by the way?
Bryce. So his name's Bryce Rivera. He's my buddy who engineered. Fantastic drummer. And obviously pretty solid. We co-produced the album together. Just throw ideas off each other. Sitting there doing like leads and stuff. We're just singing leads at each other and the guitarist. So three of us in a room going, no, what about this? What about this? Just very, very intuitive. So like much love to Bryce Rivera. We finished tracking in probably like August of 2021. And then we mixed in like January, February. We had a little gap there where he had some other projects he had to do, but then we came in and mixed that all together. And then Jesse Cannon mastered it, as you said. He did both Terra 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 albums that I did, back in the day. So have stayed in touch with Jesse ever since all that. And also his brilliant mind, right? I should listen to half of what he tells people to do on music marketing.
And that's great. It's like another, all of these people that you've worked with in your creative past along the way, you get to kind of bring all of them back home and bake them into this record, which has got to be a great feeling and also makes the process a lot less stressful, which is, I think, the theme of what we're talking about here, where it's like you first and foremost wanted it to be honest and wanted it to be fun. And it is, man, it's a fun listen but it doesn't feel like it's trying to be anything other than just what it is, which is really cool.
Which is like the biggest compliment you could give. And I want to thank you very much for that. It means a lot to hear that, because it's at the end of the day, like nobody gives a fuck what you're doing, and nobody else is going to like lift you up in the way that you can lift yourself up and enjoy what you're doing. So like, why not make sure that the process is as enjoyable as it can be? And there's nothing, I'm very blessed to have talented musical friends, but you know what? We've been friends for such a long time that it was like, it was my pleasure to get to tap in and use them as like, oh, you're a close friend, so I'm going to call on you to do this thing. But like, we'd be hanging out, cooking out, or watching something together anyway, so may as well be doing some music.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I love that.
Thank you so much, Matthew, for sharing the journey behind this record and for sharing everything that went into it. Where can everybody either listen to it and follow along with you? All the good stuff. By all means, plug it. We'll put it in the show notes, because I do want people, especially whether you're a fan of a number of the influences and artists that we mentioned, when we mentioned a bunch of them on this episode. Or just want to hear something and resonate with this kind of story and what you've been putting across here. Where can they find it all?
So everything is streaming on all the normal places. So your Spotify, your Apple Music, I've got a SoundCloud page. I make sure everything's on, all that kind of stuff. A couple videos on YouTube. Going to release some. We just shot some. A little while back, went out on a boat and shot a couple acoustic performances of these on a little island here in the Bay. So, got a couple of those that we'll be posting up soon. and working on trying to do a vinyl pressing of this one, even if it's just like a limited run, because we did this through I started a label for this, Bro City Records. Bro City is just a group of friends of mine that I've had for a long time. And so we're going to try to do like a little small run of vinyl that we'll be putting out hopefully next year. Again, my baby's coming in February. It has really changed.
Yeah.
Like when you find that out at the start of summer and you have already locked into an album release and everything that's going with it, it was like, we're shifting everything. Like, so as a heads up, if I'm not as active in the springtime, that is why we have a couple months of baby time there before we get back to it. So, but you can follow me on socials at like Matthew Lowry 711 for now. I'm working on a Matthew Lowry and the FCP thing for the future for more all band kind of stuff. But Matthew Lowry 711 on Instagram and Twitter and on TikTok and all that good stuff. So yeah, and I'm trying to think of anything else that is very pertinent that I'm active on. I don't know what else to say. I'm going to play some show. Yeah, follow me online. I've got some shows coming up in January, doing some Florida runs before I take my little baby sabbatical for a few months. So Orlando, Lakeland, Tampa shows are going to be in late January, and we'll be announcing those soon.
So cool. Well, good luck with all of those. Good luck with the new addition to your family when it comes. We hope all goes well in the meantime. And congrats again on the album. And thank you for sharing it with us. It was a blast. We enjoyed it.
Casey, Tom, you guys are awesome. Thank you so much for having me and giving this record the light of day in your world, because it genuinely means everything to have you guys listen and talk about it with me. So thank you very much for giving me the chance.
So we began this season by speaking with guitarist Corey Wong on episode 69 about how the songs on his album The Lucky One challenged him to stretch his view of himself as an artist. And on episode 72, we heard Luna Aurora speak about the importance of identifying the things that aren't serving a song, and even more so, the things that aren't serving your path as an artist. On episode 74, Mike Herrera of the band MXPX offered his perspective on evolving as a songwriter, performer, and person across a career spanning 30 plus years and 11 studio albums. And finally, with this episode, we listened to Matt Lowry explain how he puts the songs above all else in his decision-making process. I think all of the conversations on this season of The Record Process highlight the idea that we're all on a path to becoming who we will be, and the records we make are the vehicles taking us there. In some ways, we are all servants to the songs we create. They direct us. They tell us and the world who we are and what we value. They speak to us as we build them, guiding us with subtle cues that only the creator can see or hear sometimes. And as the songs slowly take on a voice of their own, we learn to listen more intently to these voices, and we grow wiser. We become more patient, more deliberate, and less resistant to the growth required in order to keep answering the call of what our songs ask of us. So keep answering the call, and we'll catch you right back here on Season 7 of
The Record Process.